We are ready.
All right. Welcome in everybody to the February 16th meeting of CB6 Public Safety. I'm Matt Roberts, chair of the committee, and this meeting is called to order at 6:34 p.m. And tonight we're joined by CB6 Assistant District Manager Brendan Berth. As you all know by now, New York State law requires all community board members to have their cameras on, the first and last names displayed from the time the meeting is called to order until it's adjourned. Otherwise, you can't count towards the quorum. Members of the public, if you have any questions or comments that you have through Q&A feature, you can raise questions through Q&A feature of Zoom, and then we'll field questions at this time permitting. We still need a volunteer to take the meeting summary tonight. So if you're able to do so, please raise your hand through Zoom. You're all familiar with the doodle poll. We've been short on volunteers lately, so if anybody is going to do it, it really should only take 10-15 minutes.
Stu has his hand raised.
All right, Stu, thank you. All right. That brings us to the attendance, and Brendan will conduct the roll.
Committee members, when I call your name, you will unmute yourselves. When your name is called, please say present. I will announce if there is quorum. Stu Desser.
I'm here.
Eric Goldberg.
Here.
Sadie Howard. Sadie is absent. Steve O.
Present.
Matt Roberts.
Present.
Ann Solomon isn't able to make it tonight. Lou Sapersky. Lou is also absent. And Seema Shaw.
Present.
Okay. We have quorum.
All right. Thanks, Brendan. All right. So the agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time, appears on the screen before you. Committee members, if there's no objection, we will adopt the agenda as stated. Members of the committee, you may raise your hand through Zoom if you object to adopting the agenda. I'm not seeing any hands. So the meeting agenda is adopted. Committee members, the meeting summary from the January 19th meeting was distributed ahead of time this morning or this afternoon by the board office. There's no objection to adopt the meeting summary as drafted. If you have any corrections or changes, you may raise your hand through Zoom. Seeing none, the meeting summary is adopted and will be available soon on the CB6 website. Everybody knows the ground rules by now. No one may speak into the floor. If you have a question, committee business, or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand. Zoom. Chat function should not be used for committee business, only for technical difficulties or to state in writing information such as an email address that was already on the record. When a committee member is given the floor to speak, I'll identify you. You can unmute. And then, of course, the camera should be on at all times for committee members, with the first and last name displayed. So that brings us to committee business here. So we have a couple of items on the agenda tonight. Continued discussion of the shelter security at New Providence Women's Shelter on 45th Street. Unfortunately, DHS has decided not to attend tonight. They're unable, according to scheduling conflicts. They now said they're going to present in March. We'll see about that. But I see we have members of the 17th precinct on, so we can get their point of view on things. The goal here is to, if we don't get a satisfactory solution here from DHS over the next month or so, we'll obviously put a resolution together, stating our point of view at that point in time. So I wasn't going to spend too much time on it, but I see we have the precinct on. So I know Deputy Inspector Edwards and Detective Arlotta from the 17th precinct are here. So Inspector, I thought you were on vacation this week, but since you've joined, I'll give you the floor if you just want to make some brief remarks about the situation at the shelter from precinct point of view.
Yes, thank you.
First, Matt, can you hear me okay? Just give me a thumbs
Sure.
up.
Yep.
All right. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Like Matt said, I'm Deputy Inspector Aaron Edwards, the CO of the 17th Precinct. It's good to see all of you at this meeting. Please excuse, I'm a little under the weather. Yeah, the shelter situation, particularly at Providence, has been alarming for a little while. We have 4 shelters in the precinct, and what we're seeing at Providence, it's very different from the other shelters. The other shelters have been pretty consistent year over year with the amount of 911 calls they generate. The amount of arrests they generate may fluctuate a little bit, but not very alarming. The amount of complaints that are made are not very alarming. What we're seeing from Providence is they account for about 66% of all of our arrests involving shelters. They had a large increase in 911 calls. Their 911 calls increased by 75% last year. Just for context, the shelter at 161 Lex was flat with the 911 calls. They had actually a slight decrease. Samaritan Village, again, flat. They were down 12 911 calls. When you look at Providence, they were up about 600 calls. So they were up 75%. And so, that comes with a significant drain on resources. And I think it goes to the security at the shelter. So we don't have really a shelter problem in the command. It's that particular shelter. There's something with either a lack of conflict resolution or being able to get ahead of just small disputes that then blow up to something bigger. We saw they took a homicide in December without, I can't get into a lot of details, but it was essentially a roommate dispute that, had it been, intercepted by security earlier, it just wouldn't have happened. Right. And so that's what we're seeing with a lot of 911 calls there, is that it's disputes between clients that are not mediated before it gets to some type of an assault or some type of a complaint. And so, we were hoping to have DHS on the call, obviously, just to kind of discuss if there was something they could do. But even if it's a situation where it's training, I don't know if they outsource some of the training to the security team that's in place now. Because a lot of it, I think, if there's some type of a formal de-escalation process, if there's some type of a formal process where security can intervene at the beginning of these arguments, I don't think it gets to a lot of these calls. Many of the assaults that we get aren't extremely violent assaults. It's a fight that turned to someone throwing a hairbrush, someone throwing soap, someone throwing an item. So these are things that are just disputes that, if we could get them mediated ahead of time, I think it'll help out a lot. They have a security team. It's private security. There is a guard on every floor. There are 2 guards at times on every floor. They do have inside. They have security where they check your bags. They have metal detectors. So, on paper the systems are in place, but I don't know if it requires just better training at that shelter for the security team, again, to maybe de-escalate some of these problems earlier. But we're not seeing this type of crime increases, this type of calls for service increases at our other facilities.
All right, very good. Thanks for the summary there. Let's see if any of the committee members have any questions on the matter. I know we've discussed it in the previous meeting, and we'll give DHS one last chance in March. They originally said that we invited for January, then they said, can we come in February? Then they said they're not available in February. So now they're saying March, but they haven't confirmed the so we'll give them one last shot next month. So committee members, do you have any questions for the inspector? Seema.
Just a simple question. Thank you for the summary. Are all of the other shelters that you mentioned also women's shelters, or are they not? Yeah.
No, they're not. The Samaritan Village is an all-men's shelter. 161 Lex is a men's shelter. I'm not sure if YMCA is mixed. Jeff, do you know if YMCA is mixed? You muted, Jeff. Oh, you can unmute. I'm sorry. I didn't realize because he's not a panelist. All right. But I'm not sure, but that's the only this one is all, but it could be mixed. This is the one that's all women's.
I was just curious, like, if there's already, and this might be a presumption on my part, is there already like different types of security measures in place at the men's shelter that are not at the women's shelter that like can be added or should be added? I mean, you mentioned conflict resolution training, but I'm just curious if there are other differences that, you know, personnel or otherwise.
It just seems to be a different company. It seems to be a different company. It doesn't seem like they have, you know, a lot more security. It doesn't seem like the facility is a lot different. It really does seem like maybe the quality, you know, of the security. Yeah, that was actually a great question. You know, after unfortunately after the homicide, we had a lot of meetings with them and even asked, you know, would you be interested in meeting with some of the other shelters to see, you know, if there's anything to do different? But essentially, it's a different company.
As far as the company goes, I mean, what's been their relationship with the precinct like, and how does that compare to some of the other ones that you work with?
Yeah. So they've been cooperative. The management of the security company has been cooperative. The management at the shelter itself has been cooperative, and so I just think that the guards, that staffing, whether it's just a training issue or if it's something like that, because when we did have DHS in there, they were able to handle a lot of the jobs internally, right? But DHS is a professional, like, police department, and so they are well trained in dealing with emotionally disturbed persons in crisis, de-escalation techniques and things. So I think some of it just may be the training. It could be the quality of the hiring, you know, because on paper, like I said, there's a guard on every floor, 24 hours a day. You know, there's staff at the front desk. They do, when you walk in, you have to go through a metal detector. You do have to show like into your bag. So on paper, the systems are in place, but it's just not a rapid response. These things go on way too long and they end up with an assault or something.
All right, Stu, you have a question? Can't hear you. I'm not sure what's going on with his audio. Was I the only one that couldn't hear?
No, I couldn't hear.
I couldn't
Okay.
hear him. I think he stepped away, but then it looks like he's back.
Oh, okay.
So
He's
I'm not
he's
sure.
getting a headset or something. Okay. Give him a
Yeah.
sec.
Okay, how about now?
Much
Now
better.
we can hear you.
Much better. Okay, so if I strangle myself with this, it'll work. It's a bit disturbing that DHS doesn't seem to be interested in showing up. Has the precinct tried to be in touch directly with DHS?
Yeah, so we were trying to set up a meeting with them, but there were some conflicts on our end, and so we were hoping that it would just happen tonight with the whole board. So we'll try and set up something on the side with ourselves, because immediately following, they did put DHS security in place following the homicide, but it was a temporary measure. So I was hoping it would be permanent, but it was only a temporary measure. And so since this meeting was scheduled, figured we would all, you know, talk together. But we'll set up something. We'll attempt to set up something on the side within the next week or so. Like I said, I don't know what their rules are in terms of when they can step into a place. So I don't want to make assumptions that they just don't want to. They may not have the funding. My best guess is that is a budget issue, because they did step away from a lot of shelters, and they're only covering a few now. And so again, I don't want to make a lot of assumptions, but I would love to speak to them to see if they do really, if they even do outsource, if they outsource their training, right? If there's something where they can bring in the team that's over at Providence and just go through some scenario-based training, something that'll, like I said, a lot of this stuff is really a lack of de-escalation. You see the arguments brewing, you see these things building up. Even when we're in the building, even visiting, you can hear arguments brewing, and you just don't see security kind of stepping in, and simple things like separating people. So, I don't think it's something that can't be managed. I just think it has to be,
Yeah,
like I said.
I don't want you to make assumptions. I want DHS to be here and just give us answers.
Agreed.
And it seems like they should be more concerned about this than is reflected in their appearance here.
Fair point. Steve, question?
The organization that's running Providence Shelter, the security that's provided by Providence, correct?
Yes.
And in addition to that, there's nothing required for those security resources to actually take training. There's nothing that certifies them that they've taken training or have met certain requirements to handle or take, classes like de-escalation, like remediation. There's nothing that's required of that organization for their security to be qualified for any of these things. Is that accurate?
So that I don't know what their requirements are,
That's
what
fair.
they require from their end. I'm just giving you my observation of what is kind of needed, and that I think would help. But I don't know what their requirements are in terms of, what certifications they need when they make those hires. I think that would be something, unfortunately, that maybe DHS can answer in terms of, what's needed to properly secure, or what certifications are needed to be a security guard at a shelter.
Thank you.
Lots of good questions. Anybody have any other questions? I mean, from what we understand, they do actually want to present to us, but they just had a scheduling conflict tonight. So if you take them at their word, that's, but I do personally sense some frustration, across the community where there's, we're just not getting answers. I truly believe, this is just me speaking, my opinion, that if they were ready to present and it was merely a scheduling conflict, they would have provided us with some upfront information. But that doesn't seem to be the case. And I was in touch with Councilman Power's office throughout the week, and they received no updates on any substantive issues pertaining to the shelter at all. So that's pretty much it. Unfortunately, it's not a great update, but thank you, Inspector and Jeff, for jumping on. I don't know if anybody has any other questions or if there's anything from the public. But if you guys have no further questions, we can do one of two things. We can write a resolution tonight, or we can wait one more month to see if they actually do attend in March before opining on the matter. So committee members, I'll leave that up to you guys. And it's been about 60 days since the incident occurred. Stu?
I would propose that we prepare a resolution for next month, and if they don't appear, then that's the resolution that we vote on.
All right, that sounds good. Does anybody disagree? All right. So I will prep that resolution for next month, and then we may have to modify it if they do present, but I think everybody's concerned about the situation, and there's just no action. And I'm sure if DHS were here tonight, they would be saying that they're slammed with the migrant crisis, and that's been a strain on their resources. So I'm not here to defend them. I'm searching for answers alongside all of you. So we'll see what happens. But in any case, Inspector,
Matt?
thanks for jumping on. Yep. Brendan,
I
go
just
ahead.
want to quickly flag something in the Q&A
Okay.
from Marlene Adler. Don't know if you see the question.
Let me see, Q&A. Okay, so what is the remedy to remove the security company if they don't improve the quality of their officers or their staff? I mean, it's really, that's really more of a DHS question. I'm not really sure exactly what's required there. But I mean, we can certainly try to track down that answer. But hopefully when they come join us, eventually, if they join us next month, they'll be there. But I believe it's more funding, but I don't know. I don't expect you to even know anything about the contract there or the length or expiration
Yeah.
date.
I don't know how the contract work or what the ramifications are. And I agree with you. I think that's more of a DHS question. But I will say this. I was hoping that DHS would be on tonight so we could work it out. But I'm on with Jeff now, with Detective Arlotta. What we'll do is, you and I speak all the time, Matt. So we'll work on getting a meeting with DHS in my office. And I have a lot of the questions and the concerns. I think that's in terms of, the last question, I believe from Ms. Adler, that was a great question about, what are any ramifications from Steve? What are certifications that's needed? Do they meet that? Kind of like what's the base requirements? And so if I can get any of those questions answered on my end, just in the conversation with them, especially really getting the feel of the room right now, and I'll share them with you. And they might even help to the resolution you're going to write. So just having some of those basic answers.
Perfect. All right. Yeah, keep me posted.
Yep.
Touch base on it next week.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Brendan, anything else from the public?
The same member of the public just said, can we pose this to them? Which
we know which point they're referring to.
Referring to the questions about the what is the remedy to remove the security company, which I think has already been answered, which is that it's really it's something we'll try to get answers from DHS on.
Yeah, I mean they've already received Councilmember Powers' letter calling for DHS security to be reinstated, which was done within days following the incident. So they haven't responded to that formally. Don't know if they will, but they're definitely aware that that there is a request for change out there. So I guess so next steps. So I'll prep a resolution for next month with this group. And then I'll touch base with the inspector next week, and we'll see if we can get some intermediate conversation going, and then of course we'll update everybody next month in this space of the latest, greatest. All right, sound good? All right. So thank you, Inspector. Thanks, Jeff, jumping on, and I'll catch up with you guys the coming days.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good night. Thank you.
You too. All right, so that takes us to agenda item number 2, which is dealing with the some mental health topics from the governor's state address. I believe they were circulated. So thanks, Seema, for pulling all of this, and thanks, Brendan, for compiling it onto a PowerPoint for us. So I guess really just kind of want to update everybody on some of the high level things being talked about at the state level. Again, we're in mid-February right now. The budget deadline is about 45 days away. So there's going to be a lot of wheeling and dealing, I'm sure, on budget priorities. So can we put that on the screen, Brendan, for anybody in the public that may not have received the email? Seema, did you have anything you wanted to discuss here, or anything you wanted to highlight? I know you kind of received this through your job.
Yeah. So hi everyone. I work for the New York State Department of Financial Services. We regulate the health insurance marketplace, among other categories of financial services businesses. And so, we have been following a lot of the work related to mental health and the expansion of health insurance coverage and its relation to mental health. So I just pulled the state proposals that I thought might be relevant to us predominantly in the mental health space. There's like a couple of things around cybersecurity as well, or public, I think online security that I've pulled out. But yeah, this is really, again, like to Matt's point, I'm not sure what will pass, with what will be kind of have a budget allocation, but these are at least the things that are being discussed at the state level for this budget season.
I don't know if there are any things you want me to highlight with these slides, Seema.
Yeah, maybe we could just go. I mean, there's like only 10 or so things, so maybe we could just spend a second on each one. So the first one is, I'm happy to just kind of quickly walk through it, expand insurance coverage for mental health services. So you'll see a page number in the title that Brendan put together. It refers to the page in the State of the State book, which is called The Book, that was published as part of Governor Hochul's State of the State address. And that's a publicly available document. I know Brendan had hyperlinked it at the end of the presentation, but if you don't have a link to it, or actually, Brendan, do you mind just dropping that in the chat maybe so everyone can just kind of see that? Thank you. That's where the page, that's kind of what the page numbers refer to, but I'll verbally just share out as Brendan is doing that. So the first one is focused on expanding insurance coverage for mental health services. The second is focused on expanding mental health services for school-aged children. The third is increasing operational capacity for inpatient psychiatric treatment by 1,000 beds. The next one is focused on improving admissions and discharge planning and establishing a systemic accountability program, as it relates to mental health care. The next one is focused on dramatically expanding outpatient services, so that patients are receiving care when and where they need it. And there's kind of a lot of kind of bullet points under that. The next is creating 3,500 new housing units for individuals with mental illness across the state. The one after is focused on cyber threats. And the next one's focused on saving lives through opioid addiction treatment. And I think that's it.
Cool. Thanks, Seema. So committee members, are there any things on here that you would want to dig deeper on? We could invite speakers for certain things or try to find some more information. I think it's a good high-level overview of what the governor proposed. Obviously, the Assembly and the Senate will be the leadership there will be negotiating the budget. So perhaps by our April committee meeting, we'll have a better idea of what's actually going into the budget. It always seems to come down to the late days of March and early April before they resolve everything. And then once the budget passes, then we'll figure out exactly what goes in there. Obviously, what the big question here is, what does this all cost? And how are they going to pay for it? It's just, very complicated question, sure. So committee members, is there anything on here that you would want to see more information on, or think we should look for speakers on? Steve?
A lot of these things that make a lot of sense. The private industry has expanded a lot of this stuff in terms of mental health services, but the thing that I'm somewhat familiar with is the cybersecurity portion of it. I know there's an effort to build an Office of Counterterrorism, but an extension of that, it's surprising how a lot of information that's exposed is personal identifiable information. I know a lot of programs and funding from the government to a lot of these agencies have to meet certain requirements. But some of the things that's kind of exposing is a person's or a client's personal identifiable information, as this section mentions, people of communities, of color, immigrants, and so on and so forth. Feel like as an extension of to counter cybersecurity, protecting one's personal identifiable information should be a consideration for applying for a lot of these programs that these agencies are trying to apply for, because that is one passive way of countering cybersecurity without a tremendous financial load on the organization. It's more of a practice of exercising and being aware of how you're handling the types of information that organizations, businesses, agencies are using. Sometimes it's done callously, but if there's a special punctuation or attention to a client's or a person's identifiable information, I believe that should be considered a requirement for organizations in the state.
Are good insights there. You're the expert on that. Yeah, I know we did have that individual from the state discussing cybersecurity a few months ago, which I learned a lot there. But it's a complicated subject for sure. Stu, you have a question or a comment?
Or one of those things. It is complicated, but I wonder if I mean I think I would like to see New York State implement a statewide infrastructure that individual state organizations or counties could then plug into. And I don't know how practical that is. In the least, it would be nice if the state could create some sort of envelope that prevents incursion, to these individual systems. I obviously don't understand anything about computer architecture, but I think there's a certain degree of, what I'm going to call arrogance in this idea that that we can prevent people from penetrating these systems that are built with so much access from the outside. And I could actually elaborate on that, but I won't do it here. But so this is an area that also interests me. Just generally going through all the topics that were discussed here, I think probably we need to look at, or practically it would be to look at cost benefit as well. Because obviously cost, the budget is not going to spread out to all of this stuff. So.
Yeah. I mean, this is certainly a wish list, and costs are always a big factor. Sure, I don't know. I don't even know if the governor knows how much all this would cost. I'm sure they have a rough idea, but specifically, there's always some differences as far as to how much something costs. But yeah. So anything else aside from cost, which I don't know if we can access just yet, that we should focus on for future? I mean, I tend to agree that, from my perspective, this is a lot of state stuff, but I feel like there needs to be a focus on New York City specific. I think there's a lot of mental health issues we're seeing are much bigger numbers here. It's unclear if New York City would get, the lion's share of this. Not to say that there aren't other issues across the state, but I feel like there needs to be a New York City specific focus, at least on the extreme level on mental health issues. All right. Anything else from the committee on this? Questions, direction for And nothing from the public on these topics. Okay. All right. So thanks, Seema, for pulling all that together, giving us an overview. I wish there was more we could do on that at the current point. But you know, there's a lot of negotiations. Obviously, we all want a lot of those things, but how much they cost, it's until you really know the costs and the actual impact behind each one of those, it's difficult to assess the importance there. So that brings us to agenda item number 3, which is the chair's report. I really don't have anything else to add other than what we talked about on the shelter. And I will note that I will be out of the country first week of March, which includes full board. So if you guys need anything from me, please let me know by, say, March 1st. I will have very limited access to email from the 3rd through the 12th. So that is Chair's report. Agenda item number 4, old or new business. I believe we have an item.
Therefore, I shall raise my hand.
Very good, Stu. Thanks.
So I would propose that we support a bill that our Assembly member Epstein is going to reintroduce this year. He introduced this bill last year. It passed the Senate and the Assembly, but was vetoed by Governor Hochul. The bill simply requires that when a person is sentenced to a drug rehabilitation program, they be told that they are entitled to enter a program that has no religious affiliation, a non-spiritual treatment program. They already have the right to choose a program that's not associated with a particular religion, but many of them don't know it. And it seems, first of all, it's a matter of both state and federal rights that you be permitted to not enter a program that is religiously affiliated. And secondly, I think it's a pretty reasonable assumption that if you're a non-spiritual and particularly an atheist, and you are put into a program that's founded on religious principles, it's probably not going to be that effective. So for those reasons, I think that this is a bill that that should pass. The governor has vetoed it because she claimed that if judges have to inform defendants of this, they may have to inform defendants of other situations where they may opt out of a religious program. That doesn't seem like a really good reason to veto it to me. And as I said, it passed the Assembly 99-47 and the Senate 49-14. So it's a pretty popular bill. So I would propose that we pass a resolution in support of this.
All right, thanks, Stu. I put that on the agenda for March. Obviously, we didn't advertise this issue to the community for February, so we can't really, it wouldn't be fair to take it up right now, but I do have it on the agenda for March, so I appreciate you flagging. And then we can take it up at that point. And I believe you have a draft resolution, so we can share that with the committee prior to, and once we have some discussion, we can look at it. All right. Any other items or old or new business? All right. That brings us here to the end. If there's no further business, I move that we now adjourn at 7:14. You got some time back. We will probably have a little bit longer meeting next month. So we'll give you some time back tonight. Appreciate everybody joining, and we'll see you again soon.